Oh, hello there. And don't be surprised, it is not the tower today, but we will come back to the tower next time. I just thought that before we finish a project, I want to show you some different things that were not possible before because we had an interior setting and not an exterior setting. Here we have an exterior setting. Right now we have a very low poly style and it's just a floating island. Uh, yeah, you see, it's just this little floating island. It is a little upcoming map for learning German, also as a little April's joke. You will see when you enter this world in future. So I have set up the scene so far. And what do I want to show you? We could make it like that, a floating island somehow, but we could also create a terrain. A terrain is an own object in Unity that sometimes cause problems with ambient with occlusion zones, not ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is the texture for extra shadows in the shader that we have in the slot here under occlusion. And occlusion culling is a system that helps to not show stuff that is not visible for you right now, behind walls, for example. It doesn't cut down computation power in your CPU, but it does definitely helps your GPU. In this scene, it doesn't make sense because there is not much happening, and usually you could see much of it. I mean, it also culls away what is behind you. When you go into your camera, then you see this view frustum, and everything that is not visible by that frustum right now would be gone with occlusion culling. And I can definitely show you how that works. It makes sense in bigger projects. In my opinion, I don't really like the occlusion culling because it can cause problems if it's set up not right, and that might not be your fault, but the models might be problematic for it, and then stuff pops away when it shouldn't, and I just like to separate everything more from each other and deactivate stuff you're not in, like changing rooms or something like that. I know it's not so immersive, but it definitely helps. So how do we do that? So we have to do something like, I just need to organize that a bit more here. So I create an empty object and call it head again, because I just like to organize stuff that is not visible in your world, but you need it for all your fancy stuff in the head. And in the head, I create an empty and call it occlusion. This here now is an empty object just to add an occlusion area to it. And this is the area that is your level and that affects it later. We can just set it up by dragging those little cylinder cube-like thingies here. So what we have to think about, the complete scene needs to be within this cube. You can just think of it like we already had the reflection probes. This is kind of like the same with this box. So it is the area in which an effect will be applied to. And this should be usually your whole level. One thing also to keep in mind, you need to bake your occlusion, and it has nothing to do with baking lights. It is an extra thing. And whenever you update stuff to your scene, you also should, before upload, bake your occlusion again. Also, it just works on static objects and not on dynamic ones, of course. So the house is higher. Now everything is within that zone. And then we need our occlusion tab. Where is it? Occlusion. There it is. So we have now this occlusion here. It works just on static objects, because when we go into a static object, then we have here occluder static and occludee static. Occluder is an object that can hide stuff behind, and occludee is an object that can be hidden behind something. So in the occlusion tab, we can look, so occluder static, occludee static, and renderers shows you all the stuff that can be affected by this zone. The occlusion areas is just the occlusion area there right now. And this is the object tab. The bake tab is the smallest occluder in meters and the smallest hole you want still to look through. Yeah, the smallest occluder, 5 meters, is a bit... Let's see, maybe 2 meters? 1 meter? The smallest hole, maybe like you want to look through 5 centimeters. The visualization is not here because nothing is baked so far. And then we can click down here on bake. And then everything... Now we are automatically in the visualization zone here. Because the camera can't see the house, it is not visible. You see just what the camera sees. So when we are now in the camera view, then you can see that just what you are looking at is computed in your graphic card. It may look fancy, but look at this. See, this is the reason I don't like those occlusion culling zones. It can be handy, but you really have to know what you're doing. And still there can weird glitchy stuff happen all the time. It might be a performance boost, but I try to get performance through other things. So you can decide. I just show you the tools that you now know, and you can decide if your scene, your project would gain any advantages using that. So if I am too close to the border under some angles, the ground is gone. That shouldn't be. You could fix that clicking on the ground, for example, and saying to the ground, you are not longer an occludee. You can't be occluded. I always need ground in the level. You see, you can fix those things, but you really have to know what to do. Yeah, so occlusion, visualization, and still it's doing that. And sometimes even the terrain is gone. And you can't save the terrain. Okay, wait. In this moment, it can be that let's clear the data, let's bake the data. Let's just do it again. It's still. So, my opinion, I hate occlusion zones. I don't use them. But for you, it's your decision. I just wanted to give you this tool at hand. Another thing that can be done, I don't need it in this world and I don't need it in our tower world, but you can do it and I will show you how. If you, for example, have the beer, we just create a new beer here. You may want that people can take that beer and move it around, not just a fixed object in the scene that is just for you to watch at it and to collide with it maybe. Maybe you want to have a pickup item, and this is also relatively easy. So we go for the beer. This is the mesh containing thingy. At first, you need to have a trigger box to make that happen. So we add a box collider. We could say, yeah, we could make it more to the cylinder object of the beer. Is here. Now it's prettier. So now we have a collider, and it is again a trigger. Yeah. So the mesh, the box collider, everything is fancy. And then you add a pickup, a VRChat pickup that automatically adds a rigid body. Rigid body is physics. This object now has physics, technically. And also you want a VRChat object sync. This thing, you have nothing to do with it but add it to an item that should be synced with others. Because if you don't do that, everything, every player in your map would have an own beer. So I could like grab it and walk with it to the bar, but for you the beer would still be here. But if you want that this beer is synced with everyone else, then you need VRChat object sync on this object. The rigid body is the physics of the object. You can say the mass is maybe is it a kilogram? That's fine. What else do you need to change on the options? The only thing that makes sense to really change on the rigid body, now it uses gravity. So if you place this beer in the air and you start your map, it would like fall down to the collider of the ground. It is heavy if you have many objects that are physically interacting. That can be unperformant. Also, a box collider is not pretty. A mesh collider would be better if it should really react physically correct. But like I said, is it needed? Usually people are annoyed when everything is falling down to the ground. You have to bow down in VR. The thing to prevent that is to not make it using gravity anymore, but it is kinematic. So you can move it, but it has no gravity. So it will stay in the air if it's there in the air. Everyone can grab it and rotate it and move it around, and it will stay there where it is without falling down. That's easier for people to use in VRChat. If you say you do a very photorealistic map and you wanted to use gravity, do it. Like I said, I show you the tools and you have to decide what you want to achieve with it. It's always kind of a decision between your vision and being super realistic and the convenience of the people that will use it later. And then the actual VRChat pickup. If you have an object that can be moved around, then of course don't make it static, because it wouldn't function then. Then you couldn't move it around. You would move around a container kinder, like you could move around the box collider, but the mesh would stay in place because it is static. That doesn't make sense. So you can give a text for interaction like beer, and for use like drink, if you would make a script on it that can, interaction is kind of the tooltip, and use text is the trigger text. The auto hold is on auto detect. That should be fine. Some objects might be better with orientation to gun or something like that. You can also make a transform in here that like an offset. So if you grab a gun, that it is always pointing forwards or stuff like that. But for most cases, you can just leave the default options here. So it needs to be pick-upable to be a pickup, of course. It is a nice option that can be animated to deactivate it, because you have the box collider here can be just deactivated like that and reactivated. The mesh collider also like that. But the VRChat pickup has not such a thing, because some components you can put on objects some of them break if they are toggled off. And so this option here provides that without breaking the object. If you click disallow theft, that means that if I hold it right now in my hand, you couldn't grab it. But if disallow theft is not activated, I could hold it and you could just grab it, and the person that most recently grabbed this beer will be the owner of the object beer, so everyone could take it all the time. Also, allow manipulation when equipped is kind of like thefting it yourself, so that you can just, align your object in your hand. And this is all. This is the magic behind how to make a pickup object. I, in this world, like I said, don't need a pickup object, and I think also in the tower world we don't need, but I wanted to show you this. So let's just deactivate it again. I mean, delete. Also something that we might want to use one day, we have a chalkboard here. What is if we want to write text on it? Well, at first, text is UI, what is called user interface. And UI in Unity, in my opinion, is a pain. In my opinion, UI in kind of every engine is a pain, but we can try to add text. So, text is using Text Mesh Pro right now. Import the essentials. I haven't even, because I haven't used it in this project so far. And then we could also just import the examples and extras. Better have and not need it than need and don't have something. A text always needs a canvas, so a background to lay on. And there are many objects, like you can have tick boxes, you have buttons, sliders, whatever, that you can add on to those canvases. And yeah, in my opinion, it is totally fidgety. It is like learning how to do excellent Word. So, like alignment and distance to borders and stuff. There are people out there enjoying these things, but those will be UX designers in future and not game designers. So, but still, there is stuff you might be interested in. I also, in this world, everything is on the standard shader. If you really want to use other shaders than that, then you can watch my character, how to set up a character for VRChat videos on this YouTube channel, because that explains shader magic better. For my purpose here, the standard shader was always enough. Also, I said that baking is always best practice, but for example, in this world, you have a directional light source. The text is so big, and you see what I mean. Why, if you create a text, it has this size here, and that's usually the case. So text is, I often like more to create text in Photoshop or similar programs to make a PNG out of it and put it on a plane like a decal and place it somewhere. I have more control about it, kinda. So before we go back to the damn text, I just wanted to say that if, like here, we are outside, we can use the directional light because that makes most sense. And I would always say the light should definitely, it is boring to have like noon light, because noon light is always makes everything super flat. Yeah, super flat and super bright. If you have afternoon lighting, that is usually a bit more interesting, and you can accentuate better all your stuff. So, for example, like this. Now you also see the bar better. Yeah, the bar is important. Shadows are giving more 3D, 3D-ish look to everything, because if you have no shadows, you have not such a good vision of the object itself. So shadows are important, and you can decide where should they be. So now that we have one light source, we could keep it real time, but hard shadows for performance. But that should be fine for a scene. If you just have, you know, it's totally fine. Another thing with lights I haven't told you before is this here, for example, I use, they are glowing here, these lanterns, because I set in the material emission to yes, and then set up an emission color here. Usually I don't really like emissive objects because they are kind of like one-colored. One color will tint the complete texture, and you can't see the main texture of the material anymore. But how to prevent that is just to use the material and put it also as a map into the emission slot. For example, if you have a neon sign, you could just click emission yes, and then could I show you an example? Everything here is super flat, so it doesn't really make sense. Yeah, this here, for example, is using something that could work. If we go in this speaker here, and I would, let's say, those speakers, no, not that, but this is the speaker. And if we say you're emissive now, usually, see, it totally kills the texture. But if you set the speaker itself as the color, and then dragging up the intensity, then it will just glow and be emissive without losing that texture. So this is just another little trick for making lamps, for example, or windows, when you're inside and the windows should like, bam, you know. The good thing about emissions, they affect your light baking. If your material is emissive and you bake the light, then there will be a shimmer on the ground and on the objects that are static around it. So emissive materials can be interesting, but tricky. They kill your texture if you're not using the texture as the emission map. Yeah, just to show you. So this chalkboard might win a bit if we just move it so that the sun can reach it. And also this code. I know you might think like, hey, what is the guy doing here in this map? Oh, it makes sense when it's out. For now, let's go back to the weird text with Text Mesh Pro. That is at least, yeah. So at first, we have to scale down the whole stuff. Up, no negative size. Negative size is bad practice. Negative size is that if you would kind of mirror it. So now it's super tiny. I mean, no, it's still big, but for example, we could say this is Barbara's bar. Yeah. So we could just drag it here, the text, and could be even smaller. It is kind of 2D, so there is nothing else but this plane. This is completely 2D, but rendered from both sides. That could be Barbara's rhubarb bar. Yeah, sorry. I am very playful. And the font size, I mean, everything else here is kind of like you think you would find it in Word or something like that. You know, you could just change the font size here. The yellow thing is kind of your page. So you could move it up. And also like here. And then you make it a bit wider so it don't starts a new. So the rotation here could be 45 to be exact. Okay. Uh-huh. 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 I'm just testing a few things because minus 45. Yeah. Okay, this thing here is also not super aligned, so we just make it by hand. Be careful if you're too far away and this text is not outstanding enough, then it will kind of vanish in the wall behind it. Yeah. Barbara's Rhabarbar. In Germany, it's also called Barbaras Rhabarbar. It is funny. Yeah, the color could be more like we could just pick a wooden color and make it a bit lighter to stand out more. Yeah, that is how to add text. I mean, it could be worse, and it was worse before. The bar is flying a bit. That is not good practice. Then, of course, everything else on the bar also would need to bar, salad, beer, and the cakes, so that it is not flying anymore. Because, like I said, it is better to go a bit in the ground than have stuff flying. That is way more weird. So this text here should be on the bar. Okay, that killed the rotation a bit, but we can fix it. Where is Rhabarbar? And for example, you could also put stuff here on the chalkboard. Chalk. So, text. I would call it bar logo, and then duplicate it, and we put it on the menu board here. Zip. And then we could, for example, if it's a German learning map, we could say something like Bar. And in Germany it would be Theke. Yeah. Oder Tresen, we would call it. So the whole thingy going up. Then we would need to, you could activate and deactivate it by clicking on if you click on the bar, then that could show up here. Just thinking about possibilities for such a map, how it could work. Of course, it makes sense to make the text kind of filling the board, not going over the borders, so it wouldn't make sense. Also, it would be drawn by, yeah. You would use chalk, and chalk is more whitish. Yeah, I would say it is fine with the size. I'm not the biggest pro in text, like I said, you could add I see that you have a mesh renderer, text mesh pro text. So text mesh pro is a new thing in Unity. The old system worked, like I said, with a canvas, and you had to add stuff to that. So they may have changed that. Legacy text mesh. Okay. So I don't exactly know all the tricks about UI toolkit. Is it like that? No. I don't know how you would add maybe as a component. When you go here, maybe new component okay, here slider is one component. Button is a component. Yeah, you can add more components, and it seems to be not using the canvas anymore, what makes it indeed better. So that definitely brightens my opinion about texts in Unity a bit, because like I said, it was always super fidgety and annoying. But if it's not it's not mandatory anymore to use a canvas object behind and everything else, and you can just create a text like that, this indeed is way more handy. But I usually don't or nearly never use text in game engines. It's just something I would use images for. I know it's not the best, but fight me. So the only thing I haven't shown, and I wanted to show you in this little project here, is one fancy thing that could fill multiple episodes, but I just want to show you that it is available. Also a thing that I don't enjoy very much. I would enjoy more creating it in Blender. But it is definitely a thing that every game engine has and also should be used. It's just not my favorite topic. In the 3D objects, we have those here are kind of the primitives, primitive forms. We have the text here. Ragdoll I also never used. And then, wind zone. A wind zone can create physics on vegetation, like trees. You can, if we create a tree, then you have a wonderful branch. This here kind of makes the tree unique. Area spread. Yeah, it's you see it on the circle on the ground, how much space it will take. And then you can add branches to the tree. And you see here the tree like as a blueprint. And you can add, you see here, the little pluses, add branch groups, you can add leaf groups, you can create your own tree if you want. But like I said, sometimes it is easier to just use what's already there and just search on Sketchfab and other sites like pine tree, oak tree, whatever. Usually you quicker get to a solution than make it completely yourself. But if you want that, it's there. But what I really wanted to show to ya is the terrain. This is this. A terrain adds a ground for you. So like I said, we could make it a floating island, or we just how big is that? A kilometer, I guess. Now you have a ground that is totally not pretty. Last time I used something like that is maybe a year ago. Create neighbor terrains will kind of create more of those huge chunks of ground that starts at world origin. Provides contacts, is important to not fall through. And the material, let's just see, it is so big. So these are the settings of it. Where is the overall size? Terrain, it's a kilometer. I don't think we really need a kilometer. Maybe like 100 meters. Terrain height is how high you could deform that before you meet limits. Detail resolution. This is the collider down here. That is on the funny thing on terrain is that you could just go here, for example, and you can draw on it with those brushes here, and you have effects. If you click on the drop down here, raise or lower terrain, then you could just grab it and you create your own landscape. This is what I said, it doesn't make sense with our tower, but if you do an outside world, You can use different brushes for different, yeah. This, for example, would be, you know, a bit too too hard. So you might go for smoother. That you have those steps. Yeah, the steps are because of the resolution of your details. You can just higher them if you want. Or a star. Totally makes sense. We have a Super Mario World now. You can also hold shift, and then it's the opposite effect. If you hold shift while drawing, then you're subtracting. If you just click, you're adding. There are other modes, like set height. Then you set the height to like 50 meters. Then it caps at 15, kinder. You can draw and draw and draw and draw, and once you hit 15 meters, it would stop. Word space, exactly. Just use another. So we can just, this here is the toggle for the, you see, for the option for the size of the brush and for the strength. Bam. Now it caps at 15 meters here. Opacity here is the strength. So how quick you will get what you're brushing. Yeah, paint holes is, for example, if we have here already something, then you could just say, I don't need terrain here. So you just paint a hole in it so that our already existing geometry can fit in here. And of course, with holding shift, you can fill a hole again. Smooth height might be a good thing for something like that, totally jagged. It kind of averages stuff out and makes it smooth again. Like that. Depends on what you want. Paint texture. Yeah, therefore we need textures first. We need... it is a year ago that I did that, but we can also paint a ground texture, of course, because no one lives on a chessboard. But we need a terrain layer. Create a layer. And we don't have any terrain textures loaded right now. You would need some textures for it. You also can just in your asset store. Asset store is now online, but if you have stuff already bought in your asset store, then it is in your package manager under packages, my assets. And then fetching the assets, you're searching for it, and then you see everything that I bought. And then downloading is to have it available, and import is to just bring it into your project. The animated wolf, for example, has this this package available for download. It is not on my computer so far, so I would need to download it. And those plus thingies here, yeah, you could just import it because I have it already downloaded. So, for example, here we have a terrain sample asset pack, or like swamp grass material. It is not so much stuff. How big? Because this is 1.6 gigabytes. This is just 100 megabytes because this is all kinds of terrain and this is just swamp. So let's just import swamp for now because it's quicker. And then you click on import and then import. This is how you use it. So the asset store is not longer in Unity, but it is in the internet, and the package manager has then access to it if you're logged in with your Unity ID. And now we can click on we need to click on the terrain again to get access to other terrain features. And like I said, create a layer. Do we have somewhere the swamp thingy now? Let's see. Yeah, we do have. Oswald? What's this? So I can click here, double click, bam. This is now the base layer. Everything is swamp. You could just create new layers and then blend between them. So this looks a bit, I mean, if you could get close, it looks super. But of course, the thing with tiling textures, it looks not pretty if you're far away and you have a big place to, yeah. How you prevent that? You create more interesting environments with displacement, like here, for example. You blend in other textures because we click here, we can click on the normal map, and swamp also came with a normal map. Then you see that we have surface detail now and a mask map, swamp. This is displacement, gloss, metal, normal. We don't have a mask map. There is an own mask map convention, kinder. There is a convention about which channels contain what, like metallicity, roughness, stuff like that. That is baked into the mask map, and this is a Unity standard thing. So I know that this terrain sample asset pack contains correctly set up mask maps. That I do remember. So, and you would draw with your brush. It doesn't make sense now. Maybe I just set up really quickly, create layer, and then we just use totally shitty this here. And then we click there, and you see what I mean. You paint the textures on it. And because you blend stuff together, it looks more realistic then. You could also change the tiling. You add props and stuff. You usually never have just a white flat plane with just one single tile texture. So now it looks shitty, but just because we have no other things, you know, we have no diversity. But yeah, you could just set up as many layers as you want and paint those. And of course, click to another layer to paint back. Beside this here, this is the setup of your chunks, kinder. This is what we did here, the displacement and the painting. This here adds trees, and this here adds details. And with details, usually you mean grass and flowers. And also, you can add detail mesh, add grass texture, you know? Prototype missing texture. Yeah, we don't have such things right now. So I just use something like this and add Atlas uncompressed. It doesn't make sense, but you can get the idea. You see it? You paint grass if you have grass. Where do you get it? Go to the asset store and download some. There are many things for free. Doesn't I even have something like that? I bet that I do have. Water, simple library. Yeah, grass and flower pack for free. This here, for example, import. Grass flowers. And then I can show you another thing to keep in mind while doing something like that. If we, for example, set up a new grass texture and we use, for example, this here, add, and we click on there and we paint some of those, then we have a big problem. Whenever you move, the grass is moving with you. You see that? It's always facing you. This is not how grass behaves, and I don't know why this is standard, because it is It is, I can't even find words on how unpretty I think this is. Because when you're looking down at the grass, it bows to the ground. So you see that? It bows for you. If you bow, the grass bows. This is so much unpretty. So you double click on it again and you deactivate billboard. Billboarding is the effect that a texture or an object is always facing the front side towards your camera perspective. And this is so unpretty. And just look at it. It's so much better. Of course, you will see that it is just a plane, but this is just how it works. Just paint more on it. You know, you can here decide on what is the minimum height, maybe just half, and the maximum height maybe 3. You know, so you have more diversity. Also, the width can be like double than the yeah, max is double than the min here. Also, you can not just in this place, but also here you can change stuff. You can say detail distance. Everything after 80 meters is not longer visible. Or you see it, it will be gone. 0 meters, 12 meters. That's the visibility of details. Then you have the density that can be more or less. Tree density we don't have here. Billboard, don't do it. It is unpretty. I can't tell. Yeah, wind settings for grass, speed, size, bending. You can just play with these values because the everything you added with those grass effects on the terrain will bend and bow and swish and swoosh. Yeah. And I don't really change every option. I'm not a fan of going into all the possible options here, because most of the stuff you will never need to change. You usually change what you need to change to get to what you need to do. If you want to get deeper into this, I bet you will find good tutorials in which you can listen someone for hours just about terrain. For me, I just wanted to show you there is something like that. You see the basic functions now. Go and play for it with it. So, detail density, you can rise it. Then you paint much more. You see this? But if you do it like that, it might be a bit overkill. If all that is rendered and you have a big place, you know, and this is all bowing in the wind, it can be a bit overkill. But also, when you have so much grass, you see that it is not longer a problem that the grass indeed is just a 2D plane. Because the mass will make it look good. So, this is how to set up terrain if you need it. Yeah, this is if you look at it, this is the most unpretty terrain that I saw in a long time, but it just for educational purpose, yeah. By the way, in our tower, look at how smooth the lighting now looks after the baking. End of the last episode, we just baked the light, and now you see what I meant. The shadows are so smooth, yeah. So smooth. You could go into the prefab and, for example, say like the shadows are to baked shadow radius, multiplayer intensity. Where was it? Ah, I guess it was the real-time thingy to change the strength of the shadows. There are other options that can tweak those. But yeah. Also, we have a nice texture here. Another thing that I can show you what we just had. If I decide that I want to have this emissive and I click on emission and we put some intensity in here. Black means nothing, white means everything. But if I just put my color map in here and not so much intensity, you see that it would be, oh, there is a UV error up here. It tiles. But you see what I mean. And this, if you You would need to apply it to the other glass too, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. This here is also a bit emissive, like you see. Yeah. I hope you got something to your liking today. And it is about time, next time, that we get back our arses back to our tower, and I show you the tricks you definitely should know before you upload your map. Yeah. Another thing I can just talk about for a bit is when you have your light source here, just try something like, imagine you animate it in a rotation all around. Can you guess what you could do with that? You could make a day-night cycle. Also, you could animate the color to change more towards reddish in the evenings, the light going to the bluish in the nights, back to the orangish in the early morning, and then back to yellow as it get noon. And the intensity could be animated from 1 going down in the night and up in the day. And the rotation. And you could make a loop out of it. And then you would have a day and night cycle. Relatively easy. Relatively easy. You could make a second light that reacts in this day-night cycle as a moonlight source, for example, to have a dim, whitish, cool light. This definitely would need to be non-static then and real-time, otherwise it would not work. But I'm just telling you how, for example, I made the day and night cycle in my Cult of Akinari map. There is a day-night cycle. You need to tweak it a bit before it looks pretty, but it's definitely possible. And you could also animate to drag and drop another texture on the skybox. So you have, like, if it's night, you switch to a night sky, and in the morning, back to a day sky. These things are possible. So, I hope that these extra thingies that I couldn't show you in my tower map might be to your interest. Have fun. Mwah.